Right. Welcome everybody to Bath and North East Somerset's Cabinet meeting. I welcome the people in the banqueting room. I also welcome the people watching the webcast from home. My name is Councillor Kevin Guy. I am the leader of Bath and North East Somerset Council. What I'm going to do, I'm going to ask the members of the Cabinet and officers to introduce themselves now. Before I do that, I'll just remind people that we're in a COVID secure area and some people may choose not to wear their masks as they're in a safe ventilated room. Councillor Samuel.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Richard Samuel, Councillor for Walcott Ward in Bath, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Resources and Economic Development.
Hi, I'm Councillor Sarah Warren. I'm Councillor for Bath Avon North Ward and Cabinet Member for Climate and Sustainable Transport.
Councillor Romero.
I'm Councillor Dina Romero. I'm Councillor for Southdown Ward and I'm the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People and Communities and Culture.
Councillor Ball.
Councillor Tim Ball, Twerton Ward. I'm Cabinet Member for Planning, Licensing, which includes Public Protection and Building Control.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
I'm Councillor David Wood, Councillor for Mendip Ward and Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you. Councillor Rigby.
Councillor Amanda Rigby, I am Councillor for Batwick Ward and I am Cabinet Member for Transport.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Tom Davis. I'm Councillor in Walcott Ward and the Joint Cabinet Member for Adult Services and Council House Building.
Thank you. And Councillor Ball.
Hi, I'm Councillor Alison Vaughan. I'm a Councillor in Whitcomb and Lincoln Ward and Joint Cabinet Member for Adult Services and House Building. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. We have three official officers present. So we've got Will Godfrey, Chief Executive, Michael Hewitt, Monitoring Officer, and Jack, Senior Democratic Service Officer. We now remind members to switch off their mobile phones either off or to silent, please. And I'm going to make the following announcement reference to webcasting. The Cabinet meeting is being filmed and recording will be available on the Council's website. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. Anybody speaking that does not wish to be filmed should make themselves known to the camera operator. Okay, moving on. So, Jack, would you like to go through the emergency evacuation procedures, please?
Thank you, Chair. If the continuous alarm sounds, you must evacuate the building and proceed to the assembly point. From this room, you follow the green running person signs to the exit using either the marble staircase at the end of the building nearest to Bath Abbey or the main staircase. People at the banqueting room should use the main staircase or the stone staircase at the other end of the room. Please do not use the lifts. The assembly point for this building is at Orange Grove grass area opposite Bath Abbey. There is an evacuation chair for use by disabled people who so wish in the corridor outside the Council Chamber Public Gallery. Alternatively, the area at the top of the marble staircase has been designated as a safe refuge where persons needing assistance should assemble. In terms of the COVID health and safety notice, there are general public health principles that everyone should follow in all aspects of daily life to help mitigate the risk of the spread of the coronavirus. And these should be followed throughout your stay at the building by maintain social distancing, clean hands regularly, avoid touching your face, and wear a face covering where necessary.
Thank you, Jack. Apologies for absence, Jack.
There are none.
Okay. Declarations of interest?
I received none. I'll just check with the monitoring officer if there is any. No.
Great, okay. Urgent business agreed by the Chair. There is none. However, I will make a statement. Before we start the meeting proper, I'd like to give an update on the proposal to introduce charges for certain materials at our recycling centres. As leader and as a common sense guy, I know how important it is both that we listen to residents and that we respond swiftly to the changes in circumstances. Two things have changed / happened since the decision was made to introduce charges for rubble, etc. at our recycling centres. First, I was elected as leader, and I reaffirmed that we are a listening council. Councillor Wood and I have listened to local residents, parish councils, who say that they are concerned by the unmitigated circumstances that these charges may bring. Second, circumstances have changed. The government have launched a consultation about consistency in recycling services in England. Bringing charges in now, only to change them following a government instructions, would be confusing for residents and would add to our officers' administrative burdens. It would not make sense, and as I'm a common sense kind of guy, this is what we are going to do. I am announcing today that we were putting a hold on the charges for rubble, plasterboards and tyres at our recycling centres. Charges will not be introduced next week. I repeat, charges will not be introduced next week. We will look again at how to make alternative savings to balance the council's budget. As Liberal Democrats, we pride ourselves in being the only party that balances the council's books every year. I am pleased that the government is seriously looking at new rules that would mean a win-win for council taxpayers and DIYers whilst helping us deliver our recycling and climate emergency commitments. It's time we started thinking differently about who pays for recycling. We need new funding streams so that the council taxpayers in areas such as ours, which prioritise recycling of a wide range of materials, don't lose out. So we will be also lobbying central government for new legislation that funding to recycling these materials comes from the producers rather than the taxpayers themselves. There is strength in listening to different views. There is wisdom in changing our mind when circumstances change. There is integrity in balancing our books. And there is common sense in pausing these charges that I am announcing today. Thank you very much. Right. Moving on to point number 6. Statements and petitions from the public. We have Malcolm Baldwin first, Jack.
That is correct, Chair. Malcolm Baldwin can come in and make his statement.
Welcome, Malcolm. It is, yes. Like coming into the headmaster's office, Malcolm, yes. When you're ready, I will start your 3 minutes, if that's okay? All right. Just give us the nod when you're ready.
Malcolm, if you press the microphone in front of you.
Oh, yes.
On or something?
Yes, it does.
Fine. So that means I'm live and you can hear me?
Yes. All yours, Malcolm. I'll
Start the clock.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Cabinet. I just this evening would like to make a few comments in respect of the Council's approach to low-traffic neighbourhoods, LTNs. I emphasise not criticisms at all, merely comments. LTNs have created concerns for some, but certainly aspirations for many, both for individuals and for a number of residents' associations, of which CARA, my own association, is one. LTNs and their effective implementation will be a reflection of the positive aspirations for a cleaner, healthier and more economically energised city for businesses and residents alike. Sensitively implemented and effectively monitored, the mandate you have and the enthusiasm you have created amongst many should now, not in my opinion, be wasted. In launching the prospect of LTNs, you have certainly created considerable enthusiasm and aspirations. My message tonight to a newly restructured Cabinet is, let's please get on with it, albeit with the constraints of normal consultation process. You have the mandate. Don't let others convince you otherwise, and stay consistent to your narrative. A number of RAs, enthused by the aims and the content of your livable neighbourhood strategy, have invested much time, thought and effort into their LTM proposals. Let's not let it be wasted. Using Cara, my own RA, merely as an example, we consulted approximately 960 households within our catchment area and did so on a detailed basis. As a result, circa 80% were in favour of our concept. We gained support from a number of our neighbouring residents' associations, and yes, concerns expressed by others. Concerns that are probably reflected in respect of all other proposals for our city in respect of LTNs. A number of LTN proposals, I suspect, can add real value to our city. Again, but only as an example, Cara's LTN concept represents potential low-hanging fruit with the enhancements it would bring to a key heritage location and the economic benefits attached to that for our city and local businesses. A less well-recognised characteristic of our catchment area is its social and housing diversity across our catchment area, which would also be much enhanced by our LTN concept and have much support across our various household profiles. This emphatically is not the so-called posh end of town. It is socially diverse, worthy of your attention. Our city needs one or two inaugural LTNs, one perhaps simple, one more complex, to validate the strategy and add maximum value, socially, economically, and environmentally.
Can I ask you to round up, Malcolm? You have 3 minutes.
I will. The low-traffic neighbourhood genie is well and truly out of the bottle. You have more than whetted our appetites. You have raised our aspirations for our city. Great, fantastic. Now let's act on that vision. Don't please get wobbly. Let's all be brave. Try to satisfy everyone, and you will satisfy no one. If we were all given next, including politicians, including all your residents, we surely meant to stick them out occasionally.
Thank you, Malcolm. I gave you a generous extra 20 seconds there, but you're welcome.
Thank you very
Does
much.
anybody have any ad hoc questions for Malcolm? Yes, Councillor Warren.
Excuse me if I pivot.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. I just wondered if you would agree that livable neighbourhoods are a vital public health measure that will improve air quality and reduce obesity by encouraging people to move around actively.
I absolutely do. And in a much wider social context as well, they're valuable.
Thank you.
Any other ad hoc questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Romero.
Sorry, no, it's not a question for you. No, it's actually just to say that the YouTube broadcast isn't working. So it's more a question for a point for Ian and not for you. You don't need to fix
I can't fix that for you, I'm sorry.
Can we have John Chapman?
So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, but you just let me know when you're ready and I'll start the 3 minutes. You do need to just put your microphone on though.
Yeah, thank you very much. Right, Sarah Moore here? No. I was going to congratulate her, so I'll skip that bit.
Oh, you can, it's videoed, so you can...
No, she's been doing a brilliant job.
Yeah.
So, full marks there. Anyway, the purpose of today was to speak to you about disabled blue badge holders because with COVID and various other plans, their needs seem to have been forgotten. I'm an administrator with a Facebook group, Bath City Centre Access Group. My wife is a wheelchair user and holds a blue badge. And I'm just going to start by mentioning the term wheelers. It seems to have cropped up from somewhere where there's a bizarre notion that cycling and travelling in a wheelchair are somehow similar. I cycle, my wife travels in a wheelchair, they are not. And if people talk about wheelers, please give them the good stiff ignoring they deserve. And my T-shirt says three-part slogan, so which is how politicians like to talk. So I'm just going to say appropriate disability representation. Next subject is access. There's a bit of a trend at the moment for the tables on the streets, the outdoor eating, drinking. It's just pleased to remind you that there are people in wheelchairs who need to get past. There have been problems in some cities. I'm not sure if there is in Bath, but it's also to remember if they're across the pavement, the wheelchair people have to get off and back on again. So keep access clear. With the parking situation, which I gather you're very well aware, Kevin, there has been rather a lot of yellow line and shared use parking removed or proposed to be removed. And we've had some very hollow words previously about the disabled bays are being replaced. But if you're losing the yellow line shared bay, it's not a full replacement really, it's a massive loss. And it is good to see that the security report that I only had a quick skim through yesterday before the brain exploded, at least did mention this and does seem to accept the problem. But as I say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, or the comments and marks you get from John and Greg on MasterChef. Badge holders matter. The drastic plastic that's in for social distancing, it doesn't seem, in some places it doesn't seem to be serving much useful purpose. In one place it's blocking ramped access to a bus, and I would just suggest it is reviewed, taking into account disability and business needs. And Westgate Buildings is one very obvious place you could do a double, get rid of the plastic, free up some parking. So declutter Westgate Buildings. And obviously a lot will be said next month about the security. And again, it's just please bear in mind that there are issues with the blue badge parking. And I'm just going to diversify a little bit and say the 20 days notice for delivery. You've got the... Yeah. I was going to say, I've put it into a slightly light-hearted way, but there is a very serious message here with the... And basically it's to remember for all to include disabled residents, disabled parking matters, and last but not least, declutter Westgate Buildings. And thanks for listening. Another three-part slogan.
Thank you very much. And does anybody have any ad hoc questions? Councillor Ball.
Hello. Yes, hello, John. Do you believe the council's flouting the Disability Discrimination Act?
Isn't it the... is it now the Equality Act 2010, I think? Apologies, but basically I think they are in many ways, in that everything seems to be disproportionately against disabled wheelchair people. And whilst it's important to consider every resident, the cyclists seem to have rather a lot of say in recent times, and some of their demands have been at the expense of particularly blue badge parking and even disability access, the bus stops that they propose where you have to cross a cycle lane. It just needs to be considered so that everybody's included, and residents, of course.
Hello. I think equalities are in my portfolio, so would you and your wife be happy to take me around and so I can see how the different things through your eyes?
Yes, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to. It's not always very so good with people, but I'm sure she'd be happy to show you some of the things.
Sure. Okay, no, that would be lovely.
Thank you for the offer. It's much appreciated.
Okay, we'll set that up then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Catherine. I did find that activity quite useful. When I went around with Sarah Moore and some activists, I was given some visually impaired glasses to walk around. It was quite interesting to see how the street furniture impacted people. It was very interesting, a good learning curve, so thank you for that, Councillor.
Yeah, it's very much appreciated your walk around, both some of my colleagues.
Not a problem, I'm glad it was appreciated. Any other questions? No. Thank you very much, John, for your time.
Thanks a lot,
thank you.
and good luck.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jess Davis. Hi, Jess. When you're ready, just give me a wave and I'll start your 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm ready.
Right, off you go.
Thank you. So I'm here today to make a short statement about the Council's approach to managing weeds, both in our parks and green spaces and also on our pavements and roadsides. There is a growing movement to change the perception of pavement plants as being more than weeds and recognise that all plants are important to biodiversity and wildlife. Meanwhile, others see street weeds as a sign of neglect in their local area, and I know we receive many complaints from residents if these are not dealt with. I would like to ask today that we revisit the way we manage weeds in Baines in 2 ways. Firstly, in terms of our approach to the use of weed killer, I welcome the steps that this Council has already made to reduce the use of the herbicide glyphosate, including phasing it out in the regular maintenance of our parks and green spaces. And I know that we've also reduced its use in street cleansing to 1 annual spray. However, many of our residents and some parish councils continue to have concerns about the use of glyphosate and its direct and indirect effects on the local environment. By killing all weed and wildflowers, it destroys habitats and food supplies for insects and butterflies, and it's also water soluble and so potentially harmful to aquatic environments as well as soil health. Many other local authorities are acting, and the Pesticides Action Network says that at least 40 local authorities have so far stopped its use altogether or in part. So please can we revisit this issue and commit to a timetable for phasing out the use of glyphosate in our operations. I recognise that many people feel strongly about a clean urban environment with no weeds and grass, and that weeds on the pavement and highway can cause damage. And there probably isn't a magic alternative around the corner, so this will mean manual and mechanical clearance. The second issue I would like to address on World Bee Day is that when we cut our grass, is the timing of when we cut our grass verges and green spaces. Again, I already welcome the steps that the Council has made to publicise our grass mowing regime and to reduce mowing as part of the Let's Get Buzzing initiative, which is aimed at encouraging pollinators. And today I visited the riverbanks at Saltford, which from this year will not be mown at all, allowing long grasses and wildflowers to thrive. Can we also now go further and look at delaying when we mow, taking inspiration from Plant Life's No Mow May campaign, and leave some areas to grow for longer, which will give more plants the chance to flower and spread, supporting greater diversity of summer flowering plants and enabling the insects, butterflies and birds that rely on them for food. I appreciate these asks will come with a financial cost as well as a change in how our streets and green spaces look. I'm encouraged by several emails from residents this spring who all want to see us do more to support local biodiversity, and I believe that these are important steps that we can take in our operational role to act on the ecological emergency in Baines.
Thank you, Jess, for that statement. Much appreciated. I'm also pleased with the Council's record on reducing the use of glyphosate in the district. We do take seriously the impact of chemicals on local ecology. However, I would like us to go further than we have gone. I would like the Council to phase out its use of glyphosate in all but the most exceptional of circumstances. This should start with phasing out use of chemicals on our streets and around our play parks. I intend to bring a paper to Cabinet next month to expand on this point. My question for you is, how can residents get involved in this process, do you think?
I think there are opportunities. I think we could be more flexible with taking feedback from residents of where they do and don't want the use of herbicide. And I also wonder whether there might be some areas where we could trial a kind of equipping local residents groups to take care of the weeds themselves in the way that we do with litter picking.
Well, that was a good introduction to my question, really, as having spent several mornings over the last few months removing weeds from areas of Camden in my ward. It takes around 2 hours to remove 200 metres of well-established weeds, so it's a very labour-intensive process. And Councillor Wood and his staff have been very helpful in providing equipment and so on. But my question really is, and perhaps this is, I think this is in your Cabinet Assistant role, can you tell me what research is being carried out on the alternatives to glyphosate weed control, and when the Cabinet can expect to receive the report that I think Councillor Wood was just referring to? I wasn't sure whether it was going to go as far as exploring the alternatives. And my purpose for asking that really is that well-established weeds are damaging some of the historic fabric of buildings and pavements, and most of my ward is older housing, and it is a significant problem. And just scraping them off the surface just means they'll come back stronger. So it's a real difficult balancing act. So I appreciate the work you're doing on this.
Yeah, I know that officers are working closely with other councils in the industry to keep on top of the latest developments, and I appreciate the issues you're raising. And that's why I use the words phase out the use of glyphosate rather than immediately stop, because I understand that we're going to have to take a sensitive approach, based on the locations we have to deal with.
Would you agree that certain areas may have to continue to be
Yeah.
which you cannot really economically? There were issues with grass cutting as well. In more working class areas, more working class areas, residents do look a bit more to have their areas kept clean and tidy with grasses being cut more regularly. So do you believe there could be an approach across the city and district with different areas?
Yes, I think we're already going somewhere in that direction with our mowing maps that we put. They're on the website, our grass cutting regime. What's inspired me really is a guy in my ward who's been in touch with me about a little grass verge kind of roundabout in their cul-de-sac, and he said there were some rare plants that were just beginning to grow and bloom, and then they were cut just before they'd had the chance to flower. And I think if we can work with people like that, where he has neighbour support, not to cut during May, I think that would be a real step forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davies. Can we have Bob Goodman next? Thank you. Welcome, Bob. Just let me know when you're ready and I'll start the clock.
Yep.
Okay, all yours.
It's immensely difficult for me to know where to start to highlight the appalling way that this administration is treating the residents of this great city. I had intended to come to speak on the closure of the Museum of Costume and other matters, but there are even more pressing issues that need to be brought to the attention of the residents. I suppose I have to begin with the ecological emergency. When Councillor Guy spoke at full council at his election as leader, he declared that Tuffer Field's planning permission would be shelved. I, like others, had assumed the field was saved for all time. How wrong was I? Then we heard councillors indicating that the decision by Councillor Guy's predecessor to look at a smaller development was still being considered, with talk of up to 10 houses. This is a betrayal of the residents and, more importantly, this special ecological site. This has now been confirmed in reply to a Cabinet question by Councillor Samuel. in which he says a smaller, lower impact development that will provide social benefit is being considered. Will the new leader now put on record that no building development will take place on Tuffer Fields, so that we can now be saved for the future generation of our wildlife and our planet? The residents of Bath want the truth. But even more disappointing was that whilst in my professional capacity as a chartered surveyor, only last week that I received from a client a copy of a letter of an email that this council had sent to her concerning the purchase of a 10-foot strip of land adjoining the house that she intended to buy at the top of Perrymead. The contents were most disturbing, and I quote, "The land is being held for strategic reasons in that it might be key to facilitating the future development of a larger area of land," and it goes on to say housing. This piece of land, I suspect, is even a greater ecological importance than even Tuffer Field. I know, as I've been birdwatching that area for many, many years, for officers to believe this land could be developed for housing is quite frankly beyond comprehension. When the residents of Perrymead, Foxhill, Coondown and Mulberry Park find out this precious green space is going to be destroyed by this council, well, this council will have to take consequences. Does this cabinet know that officers are actively looking at these types of sites? Then, if you do, you are showing scant regard to ecological emergency, which has been declared. If you don't, then who is actually running the council? It's clearly not this cabinet. It is obvious to those who care about the environment that the ecological emergency which was passed by this council is being paid nothing more than lip service by this administration, and there has clearly been no change with the new leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I'll ask Councillor Paul, please.
Thank you. Let's see you in person, Bob.
And you.
Bob, would you agree with me, as well as ecological emergency, we also have a housing emergency at the moment, and we do need to deliver housing for people who have no homes. Currently, the housing list is growing, as I'm sure you well know. As regard the Tuffer Fields you're calling this Coombe Lane development, would you not agree a smaller development which then protects the land in perpetuity for further development is probably a good idea and not a bad one?
So, two questions. One, do I know the housing? Yes, but the council have a site which they remain undeveloped. They have planning permission and undeveloped on South Quays, still not developed, as you will probably be aware. So there's 60 units there which could be developed. Do I think a small development there? No, I do not think. I think the ecology comes before houses in this particular case. Brownfield sites, there are those around here, in this area which could be done without impacting on ecological sites, and the one at Perrymead, quite frankly, is a disgrace.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Samuel.
Well, good evening, Mr. Goodman. Are you aware that the previous cabinet, of which you were a member, approved the making of the planning application that you referred to, and in doing so, incurred a cost to the council of over £600,000? And that if that development no longer proceeds in any sort of form, that money, plus other monies that have been expended since, will have to fall on the council's revenue account in the total of around 750,000.
The quiet answer to that, so be it. Am I aware? Yes, and I think it might well be prudent for you to look at the monitoring officer's notes on Tuffer Fields and my involvement on Tuffer Fields. It might well be worth you doing that before you make accusations.
I'm making no accusations. I'm just reporting the facts to you. And you may not be aware that both the Director of Finance and the Chief Executive have advised that the Council cannot make that decision without the context of exploring whether there are any other development possibilities on that land, which was a decision taken both by the previous Leader of the Council and agreed by the current Leader of the Council. So are you aware of those facts?
And you've just given away Bathampton Meadows.
I'll take that as a yes, you were in the cabinet that was responsible for that planning application, Bob.
I did say that.
I said I'll take it as a yes. Councillor Wood,
I think I also said that perhaps they should look at some conversations which I had had with Montrose.
I'm a bit confused, sorry, Bob, were you in the cabinet that made this decision or not?
I've been very honest right from the start. In fact, Councillor Ball asked me that question when I gave a speech on Tufferfield before, and I said yes.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Yes. Can I just ask you one more question, Bob? We have a climate emergency, we have an ecological emergency, we have a housing emergency. Do you not accept there have to be issues where tough decisions must be taken to ensure we can provide housing for all our residents, as well as protecting, as far as possible, the ecology and the environment?
Of course, Councillor Ball, but as I said, there's 60 units remaining not dealt with on South Keys.
Thank you, Mr Goodman. We've established that you were in the cabinet that made that decision for the last planning application. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe that is the end of the public speakers. Right, we'll move on to point number 7, which is questions from public and councillors. Registered questions and answers are printed and available in the public gallery. There have been 20 questions from councillors. Are there any supplementary questions, please, Jack?
Mr. Chairman, just apology, I did say public gallery, what I meant on public website.
Oh, on the public website.
My apology. I understand that we have Councillor Grant Johnson who would like to ask 2 supplementary questions in relation to questions 17 and 18 on the list.
Okay, can I ask for Councillor Johnson to be brought in, please? Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I believe you have a supplementary question for question 17, please.
Yes, well, obviously with the announcement today, I've had to dramatically change the questions I was going to ask Cabinet this evening, but the leader of the council said that charges for waste would be confusing for residents, but I think that does them an injustice. Does this Cabinet agree that they need to start thinking of residents first before blaming their ability to follow your half-baked ideas?
I assume that is aimed at me or is aimed at Councillor Warren? But I'll let Councillor Warren answer that.
I think it might relate to question 18, which is Councillor Woods.
Yeah, we've got to listen to that. You've jumped to question.
Oh, sorry, am I on the wrong one?
So are we on question 17 or question 18 now?
I mean, I haven't got it up in front of me because...
Oh, right, okay.
They're next to each other, that's all I know.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you very much for the question. A wise council, as we heard earlier, is a council that is willing to change its mind based on new evidence. I've not seen any evidence that the decision that was made was the wrong decision to make in light of the financial context that we found ourselves in at the time. However, circumstances have very clearly changed since that took place, and the idea of bringing in charges which it now becomes clear may well be reversed off the back of a government consultation would be extremely confusing for all concerned. That would involve wasted effort by the council, so it's absolutely the right thing to do to both respond to the circumstances and also to make it very clear that we listen to residents when they speak to us with a very strong voice.
Shall we go back to 17?
Yes, we can do. How does the Cabinet member think residents will interpret the spending of £800,000 on 6 bikes and a locker in Bath? And do you think this will generally support businesses?
Councillor Warren.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. You make a very interesting point, and I will consider my answer and get back to you in 5 days.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, right, moving on. Minutes from the meeting of the 11th of February. Can I invite everybody to say there's a true record of that meeting, please? Yes, all in favour? Yeah, splendid. I'll sign them at the appropriate time. Number 9, consideration of single member items now requested to Cabinet. There are none. Item number 10, consideration of matters referred by policy development and scrutiny bodies. There are none. Recent single member decisions taken, item number 11. I will note them, please. Yes, for noting. Yeah, no comment. Thank you very much. Item number 12, Heritage Services revised business plan. Can I ask Councillor Samuel to move that, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendations in the report as set out in 2.1 to 2.3, and I'll just have a few remarks to make before we have the seconding. Well, it will have escaped nobody's notice that last year has been a very difficult year for the Heritage Services part of the Council. The Roman baths and other attractions have been forced into closure by the government's decisions on lockdown. Tourism has largely collapsed for many periods of last year, particularly international tourism. And in the most extreme events, we have had to furlough some of our staff within Heritage Services during the period of last year. And that's all been a very sad and difficult period for the staff, and they have done incredibly well, I think, to keep their morale up during that very difficult period. Members of the Cabinet will know, of course, that the Heritage Services part of the Council contributes an enormous amount of income in normal years to Council services, and that provides services for many other residents within Bath North East Somerset. So it is an important service, and to some extent, the health of the Council's finances and the health of the local economy are mirrored by how well Heritage Services do in the facilities that they run on our behalf. Despite the difficult year last year, there were some outstanding things completed, really. In particular, I would highlight the completion of what was called the Archway Centre. I think it's to be called the Claw Centre, which is next to the Roman Baths, which will really extend the interpretation of Roman history in Bath for children and other visitors over the coming years. And when it opens properly, I would encourage all members of the Cabinet to visit and have a look at what is there. It is really an exceptional building, and the contractor, Beards, who carried out the work, have done a very, very good job, very high standard of finish, and I'm very confident that the work that they'll now be doing on the Cleveland pools will be of equal quality. But really this report is about, rather than looking back, it's about looking forward, and it covers a 5-year period, which I think, as it often does actually, but I think there's a particular value in that at the moment, because that is probably the period over which we can expect some return to normal levels of trading and activity within Heritage Services, and that's helpful to do that. I won't go through all the detail in the business plan. It's there for members of the Cabinet to read, but there are some interesting things just to pull out. We benchmark our services against what's called the Association of Visitor Attractions, which is ALVA, which really covers the major attractions in the UK that attract tourist visitors. And we benchmark very well against those. We are the only local authority within that association, and Stephen Bird and his team have always sought to provide standards of excellence that match up to the best in other sectors. So it is a good model. It's the whole concept of proper business planning, looking ahead at your numbers, looking ahead at your investment, looking at what you need to do, is a very good model, and something that I would recommend to the whole Council as an approach. There's a very interesting small diagram in the report which Stephen describes as the tripod of sustainability, which I think does reflect the balance that Heritage Services try to achieve between conservation, income for the Council, and the custodianship we have of the service. It's quite an interesting little drawing. I hadn't thought about that before. In a normal year, we had around 1.2 million visitors plus to the Roman Bath pump rooms and the Victoria Art Gallery, and I would say they are the essence of Bath. But what I want to spend the most time on to finish is to talk about the future of the Fashion Museum. Please don't take away from this the negative view expressed by the last public speaker. The Council has known actually for some time, in fact I think before this administration took hold in 2019, that the National Trust was likely to exercise its option to break the lease that the Council held from it at the Assembly Rooms. So we find ourselves in a position now where the National Trust will recover possession of the Assembly Rooms in March 2023, and our attention now has to turn to the re-provision of that service in some part of the city. We are not going to be leaving the Assembly Rooms in bad odour with the National Trust. We have had meetings with the Trust. We have established that there will be a sensible approach to our departure from the Assembly Rooms and the start of a new project for the National Trust at the Assembly Rooms, which I believe will add a lot to the visitor interest in Bath. And so I don't see that, as some people do, as a negative thing. I think the National Trust is going to invest a significant amount of money in the city, in the Assembly Rooms, and to be honest with you, as a key partner in the city, with the work that we've done around them on the skyline areas around the city and the recent transfer of Bathampton Meadows, I regard the Trust as a privileged partner with us, an important partner with us. But turning to the future of the Fashion Museum, this is not something that can be easily re-provided. There is quite a lot of work to do to establish a suitable premises. It will have to meet exacting standards of air handling because the collection is old and valuable and actually unique in the UK. It's one of the best fashion collections outside the Victoria and Albert Museum in the whole country. So this is a collection of international importance, and it's important for the visitor interest in Bath that we provide it. Now this is going to be an expensive project, and I have already charged officers with the task of bringing forward a tangible proposal to re-provide the Fashion Museum within what I'd call the historic quarter of the city, so within a few hundred metres of the Roman baths and the pump rooms, because that is the place that all the evidence tells us is the best suited for such a facility. And I'm hoping that we can actually improve on the current location. The Fashion Museum is a little bit tucked away, it's a little bit of a secret, and it's not the most easy place to direct yourself to, and it's done very well in its current location for many years. But I'm looking to see if we can locate a new facility in a much more high-profile centre and use it as part of the springboard to see confidence returned to the northern part of the city around Milsom Street, which sadly is in decline at the moment because of the hostile conditions in the retail sector. So there is a challenge there, Leader, that I have set to officers. I want to see a proposal that we can run with very quickly so that we can bid for the appropriate resources to help us develop this project. And I'm hopeful, possibly by the next Cabinet, that we will have something to say about that in how we're doing on that. So I just wanted to finish what I've said there by really repeating my thanks to the staff. They work incredibly hard. They are incredibly focused on the customers they receive. The feedback that they get from customers is really positive, and I can only praise them once more. But with that, I move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe Councillor Romero is going to second.
I am indeed, thank you. Yes, so Heritage Services has in normal times been the bedrock of our council's finances. And though for some residents, visitors to our museum and heritage attractions can be quite challenging, particularly in the city of Bath, it does provide the lifeblood for the services this council provides, especially for the most vulnerable in our communities. This last year has not been normal times, and the sudden loss of visitors has hit our economy hard. In the summer, we were able to open the Roman baths to a third of normal capacity, and this certainly helped. Then we had a third lockdown. We have just this week reopened all three of our main heritage attractions, the baths, the art gallery, and the fashion museum. I was delighted to welcome back the first visitors to the fashion museum, and if you'll allow me a small plug, the shoe exhibition is fabulous. Go and see it if you haven't already done so. I look forward to the relocation of the Fashion Museum within the city, and as the lead for tourism, I expect to be working with Councillor Samuel on its new home. Anyway, back to my main point. The paper before you recognises that coach-borne day trippers don't add much to our local economy, and even if we may not want it to be the case, this city and this authority still needs tourism. It relies on its heritage assets to bring those visitors in. We just want them to get out of the coach and to stay longer. I personally don't want to hear again how lovely the deserted streets were during the first lockdown. Someone told me that it was just like Sundays in the city used to be. Instead, I want the bustle of busy streets. I want to hear a wide variety of languages being spoken over the course of a number of days. It is this busyness and our global reach of our heritage that keeps this council alive for the benefit of all our residents. We must not lose sight of that direct and critical link. I welcome the revised plan that shows a clear path forward over the next 5 years, while still recognising that these are still uncertain times.
Thank you, Dina. Excellent points. I'm open for debate. Councillor Ball, please.
Yes, can I echo the points of my two previous colleagues? We have some of the most wonderful staff in the country, work in this area, work in the area we've actually had. Councillor Samuel's earlier reports regarding the Cleveland Baths. I was brought up at Cleveland Baths as a child. I'm looking forward to reopening, and it should never have been closed in the first place. And guess who we can blame for that? It was a Conservative administration that closed it previously. So there's a little bit of fact for you didn't probably know about. With regard to the issues of the National Trust, which was brought to us by a colleague earlier on, who accused us of giving away Barthampton Meadows, well, why wouldn't you? To give it to an organisation that's going to look after it and bring it on in perpetuity. So basically it's there for life. With regard to the Fashion Museum, it's been known for a long time that the National Trust wanted to break that lease. It was known to the previous administration as well, and the administration before that. And where negotiations have taken place for a long period of time. Going into the Fashion Museum was on several occasions. It's not the most accessible place anyway to get into. As a lift goes down, there's a small lift, and not very useful for many people with disabilities to use, although they can use it. It's very important when we're looking for a new location for a Fashion Museum, we take all that on board. In our equalities issues, we want everybody to enjoy the heritage that is Bath, inside Bath and North East Somerset. And we must keep the tourists coming, and coming in when it's safe to do so as well. We have a while to go yet before we're totally out of the woods with the COVID issues, but working with our staff and working together across the area, rather than picking holes in everything, like some people do, we can get forward and get a very successful economy running again here.
Excellent points, Councillor Ball. Anybody else before Councillor Samuel sums up? Yes, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, and I'd echo a number of the comments that my colleagues have made. And yet again, the report demonstrates the value and importance of these cultural assets, of which we are the current guardian. One thing in particular I'd like to note in the report, which I strongly commend, is there's a reference in it to encouraging greater take-up of the Discovery card by our local residents. And I think at this time in particular, the more we can do to promote that scheme and indeed develop the scheme so that more and more of our local residents can benefit from the take-up by visiting these centres would be highly commendable. It's only, I'm sure many of us here are only reminded of the beauty and the significance of these cultural assets when our friends visit us in the city, and we go and visit the centres with them often. The second thing I'd add, which I don't think is in the report, nor would I expect it to be, but it's just part of this wider economic and cultural support role that the council can play at this time where such institutions have been so badly impacted by COVID. And I just would encourage Heritage Services team, and I know they look to this already and do this, to wherever possible work in collaboration in supporting our other cultural venues that we have here in the city of Bath and North East Somerset. You know, the ideas of joint marketing, ticketing, promotion, all of these venues need all the support they can get at this time. And I thoroughly enjoyed reading the report, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davies, and thank you very much for your inaugural comments as a Cabinet Member. Councillor Samuel.
Nothing to add, Chair. I think we'll just move recommendations and go to vote if that's needed.
Move to the vote then. All in favour, raise your hand.
That is unanimous.
Thank you very much, Jack. Excellent. We'll move on to point number 13, which is modern slavery, and that is Councillor Samuel to propose again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, from something that is a success story to something that is sad that we as a country have to address, which is the fact that there is still exploitation of people taking place in our society in all places at all times, and that the Modern Slavery Act that was passed in 2015 is an attempt to try and shift the debate on that towards a position where this is unacceptable in UK society. We have a small but important part to play in that role, and what you are being asked to sign up to tonight is a statement that is attached to the report, which really is about highlighting our commitment to tackling issues of modern slavery and doing it through the medium of procurement. So the Council, as a big public service provider in Bath, North East Somerset, is procuring services from a whole range of different providers in the private sector and the public sector, actually, but principally the private sector. And as you get into those private sector providers, of course, there are sometimes quite long supply chains, and sometimes those supply chains end up in the most unexpected places. So what this is trying to do is to create an environment where council officers who are involved in council procurement begin to exercise the economic power that we have as a procurer of services to drive out modern slavery in the supply chains that provide our services. I don't think I don't think we know the extent to which this happens, or indeed if it happens at all. But the important thing here is that we make clear statements about our position, and that if we do come across instances where people are being exploited, then we are able to take action in those circumstances. So this is a really important report. It's probably not something that will hit the front page of the Chronicle, but actually, in terms of who it benefits, it could really benefit people who are often exploited by employers who capitalize on low wages, insecure contracts of work, or perhaps at times indeterminate or uncertain citizenship holding. And that is the sort of environment that enables employers to perhaps exploit those individuals, and that is something we stand very firmly against. So, Chair, in moving these recommendations, that is the purpose of this fairly short report, and there will be more information to follow if Cabinet adopts this, and I hope you will. Then we will then begin the work set out in the report to begin to turn this into a reality. So we will be able to incorporate requirements into tender documents. We will be able to consider the arrangements new suppliers who we're not familiar have. And the aim here is to really put our tenderers under no illusions that we will not tolerate this sort of behaviour from them if we find it. So, Chair, with that, I move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. I believe Councillor Bourne is going to second.
Thank you. This is a very important and sadly still relevant issue that we all have a duty to combat. I'm very happy to second this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bourne. I will open up for debate. Councillor Romero.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see the Council's continued commitment against modern slavery through its procurement processes. During lockdown, I chaired a well-attended webinar on slavery, originally aimed at the issues raised through the Black Lives Matter movement. We included a presenter from the police to highlight that slavery exists today. I know from the feedback I received that this was a real eye-opener for many. Some did not know that modern slavery is happening right on their doorstep. Modern slavery exploits vulnerable people, and we as a council must continue to do everything we can do against it. So if anyone watching this meeting has any concerns or suspects a business of modern slavery or exploitation, then I would urge them to contact the police or the council straight away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor. Anybody else? I will ask Councillor Samuel to sum up, please.
Nothing to add to my initial remarks, Chair, so I suggest we move to vote.
Yep, move to vote. All in favour?
That is unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Jack. Moving on to point number 14, corporate strategy and COVID response update. Councillor Samuel.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is a report, I hope, that would have appeared every year of our administration at the end of the year, and it won't have escaped anybody's notice that probably to ask officers to prepare what is a very comprehensive report and covers 2 years would have been probably not the best thing to do at that point a year ago when we were in the ravages of the first lockdown. So that's why this report covers a 2-year period. And it does look ahead as well. I hope that we will be able to repeat this report next year, and I hope that at the end of this administration's term we will be able to report on what was achieved corporately by the Council over that 4-year period. Now, the reason I say that is that I think councils that set out grand aspirations and then never report on them to the Council, never actually say how they're doing, never expose themselves to external challenge, those are not good positions to be in. I am a strong believer that if you have committed to do something, then you should be prepared to report on it, even if it's not as good as you hoped it would be, but just so you can show the public what effort the Council has been making. Now, this is quite an exhausting report, actually. I'm not going to go through the whole lot, you'll be pleased to know. Because there is so much information in it, and it's a tribute to the Chief Executive and his staff that actually so much has been done in such difficult circumstances over the last 18 months in particular. This Council has gone through an enormous amount of change in the last 2 years. We effectively now have a completely new senior management team. The Chief Executive has restructured large parts of the organisation and refocused it, and I'm sure members here will comment on the realignment of council priorities to our political priorities and the way that that is beginning to bear fruit. And that's something this report shows very clearly. It also shows where ambition has been made, and I'm sure as councillors we are a very impatient bunch. We want things to happen yesterday. We want things to happen as quickly as they can. We want to show the impact to the public. But I think it's worth, just before I go on to talk a little bit about that, I think it's worth reflecting on what was done during the last year when the Council was most affected by COVID. I've seen members of the opposition make facile comments such as, well, with business grants, you were just handing out the government's money. Well, my God, if it was as easy as that. To be told that often at only a few days' notice that a new grant scheme was being introduced, and then to introduce the systems to enable those grants to be paid to businesses who needed those grants, and to make sure that there was no fraud in the system is actually a considerable achievement. And as far as I'm aware, we have had no instances of fraud, and I'd compliment Andy Rothery and his staff in this, because Andy was very clear in discussion with me right at the beginning that we needed to get this right so that we could be confident that the public money we were handing out, which is now heading towards 100 million, by the way, was put to the right places. So that's a considerable achievement. I expect others may talk about the work that was done on free school meals, on the hub, and the general public health response to COVID, which has consumed a lot of time and energy and corporate capacity over the last year. So this has been very, very important work that clearly had to take priority. But what I also want to touch on is the accusation from some that somehow the council is less committed than it set out to be at the beginning of this administration to driving down carbon emissions. This is quite offensive, really, because actually when you look at this report and you look at the tangible measures that are being taken, some of which are not completed yet, of course, but the measures that are being taken will have an impact. Now, Councillor Ball and myself, for example, visited Bath Quays yesterday, which obviously is a long-standing project. We went to Bath Quays South, which has run over many years. And from a room over Zoom probably a year ago, I think, where the decision was made to remove gas from the main office block, to introduce higher levels of solar power, solar panels, and to turn over the parking on the site to electric vehicles only, and to have absolutely top quality secure bike storage. Well, it was fantastic for Councillor Ball and myself to see it for ourselves yesterday in its completed state. And I have to tell you, I was completely blown away about it, to see 20% of the energy demand for that big office block being provided by solar energy. And that's the sort of tangible commitment that has been done. Now, others will talk about other aspects of this, but there's plenty to look forward to. We've already referred to Cleveland Pools, which is a major project on council land. We have Cleveland Bridge currently underway. I am confident that we will go much further on the Riverside route over the coming years, and I think with extra support from WECA, that could be something that will transform the opportunities for walking and cycling in Central Bath. And there is so much more. So what I wanted to just conclude with, Chair, and there are lots and lots of stats and figures in here, and everybody will find different things to interest them. This is a very busy council. It has been extremely busy over the last 2 years, and we look forward to being even busier over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Councillor Wood to second.
Yes, delighted to second this report. It really does show quite how much has been achieved in 2 years in adverse circumstances, but also shows us how much there is to go in the next 2 years as well. I'll second it as tabled, but wanted to draw particular attention to environmental issues in North East Somerset that have been taken forward, particularly planning a new recycling centre in Keynsham, our litter-picking blitz on the A roads and B roads of North East Somerset, and our war on fly tipping. Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. I will open for debate. I think Councillor Ball's going to start by apologising for leaving his phone on.
Thank you. I'll try and be, so I apologise for the phone. That's part of the override system on, so I was trying to go right off. I think we have to pay a great deal of credit to our staff who worked through these pandemic issues, still delivering projects. As Councillor Samuel just said, Bath Quays South, the development was wonderful there, but it's still high standard. And the contractors have to be thanked and give credit to the work they put in to actually get the scheme delivered in the pandemic. It's unbelievable what has actually been done there. And I understand we're pretty well on having the building let out, Councillor Samuel, as well. So it looks like business is returning to Bath. People want to be here. They're opening up. They want to come. They want to actually establish themselves in this community of Bath and North East Somerset. So we have a lot to thank our staff for. We have a lot to thank the businesses in Bath for. who've continued working and providing services throughout the whole area. We can look forward to a very clear future. This administration is still looking forward to delivering on many of its priorities. During the lockdown, the refreshed local plans continue to go forward. That will come forward to be adopted early next year, and credit has to be paid to staff who sat at home and worked from the living rooms, from the kitchen tables, who actually delivered a service which is unbelievable. We're one of the few councils that's still gone forward for actually delivering what we intend to deliver. Some of our staff in Tom's new housing area were actually working on the COVID emergency for a while, but they've continued working, and they're bringing plans forward, which I'm sure Tom will bring to our attention in the next few months in this cabinet meeting, of how well that area is going to deliver. And Amanda's area, the transportation, is going to deliver fantastic things. Sarah, in the climate emergency areas, is delivering now. So cabinet members are still delivering at the same time. So let's continue the work, ignore the silly comments we get from one or two people who sit here at night trying to pick holes in everything, and get on with the work.
Thank you, Councillor. Excellent points. Councillor Warren.
So in addition to all the great work that council staff have been doing over the last year supporting the vulnerable and responding to the pandemic, despite all the logistical challenges in their own lives that we've already heard about, I'm really delighted that we have been able to progress action on the climate emergency as well. So we've run webinars for the public and carbon literacy for councillors and staff to ensure that these concepts underlie all council decision making. Amongst other things, in the last year we've declared an ecological emergency, and we are, I believe, one of the first councils in the country to carry out an update to our local plan for the primary purpose of ensuring changes to our built environment are responsive to the climate emergency. We're preparing to review our procurement strategy to reduce the carbon footprint of the goods and services we buy as a council. We've brought in the first charging clean air zone outside London on the planned date of the 15th of March. We've adopted a strategy to implement livable neighbourhoods, and we'll be announcing the first schemes for progression next month. We've consulted on active travel schemes to provide safe cycling and walking on some of our more strategic routes around the city, and should be making an announcement about that next month as well. We've secured funding for energy efficiency measures in homes of those on the lowest incomes, and we're developing energy efficient family homes through our development company. The coming year will be about kicking off the green renewal, for which we've been developing a vision in partnership with key local businesses and employers around a more localised economy, a greener approach to tourism, new green industries, energy efficient retrofit, renewable energy, and restoration of nature. We'll be developing further partnerships with local organisations around our response to the ecological emergency as well. So I commend this excellent report to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. I'll ask Councillor Sandler to sum up. Oh, sorry, Councillor Romero, please.
Thank you. So I'll just touch on a couple of items within the report. Firstly, free school meals. The very first thing I did, once confirmed as Lead for Children's Services, was to make sure funding was available to provide free school meals over the next school holidays. I have also asked for what will happen over the summer holidays, and I will come back to you with an update once I know whether government will have given this matter any consideration at all, and therefore what the council's own plan will be. I will do everything I can to make sure that holiday hunger is a thing of the past. But it's not just children and families that are going hungry and need practical and immediate help and support, and that is why I continue to advocate and promote the work of the Community Wellbeing Hub. There continues to be a need for help, from food provision to mental health support to debt management, and many more services that are offered through over 200 organisations that are involved at the Hub. The triage approach that the Hub operates has really helped people not get passed around various systems, and having a single system helps those who really need the help. The Hub puts supporting people first, and I will continue to support the Hub in its works as I have done throughout the pandemic. I remain immensely proud of this council and our staff's response to the pandemic. I believe during it we were able to do things that we would not have prioritised in the same way. We held a far wider range of discussions with the public and other stakeholders, including on city centre security, the closure of Cleveland Bridge, how to make our homes more green, slavery, the impact of the pandemic on our young people, and many, many more topics. Despite lockdown, I think the Council has able to be more open and transparent about what matters to our residents. I believe these innovations will still have a place in the future, whatever it looks like, and I hope that colleagues here will ensure that those innovations stay in place.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor. Excellent work on free school meals. Councillor Samuel, can I ask you to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, before moving 2.1 to note, I just want to also make the point that all of this is being achieved within the budgets that the Council has set. So in the first year of this administration, there was no overspend in the budget. It came in, as we had predicted, on the nose. I don't know the figures yet for 21-2, but the indications are very positive, despite the massive hit and cuts that the Council had to make in year to our budget, and despite the government's underfunding of lost income, where they reneged on their promises to cover all income losses to local authorities. We don't find ourselves, thankfully, in a position that Luton, for example, which relies very heavily on income from Luton Airport, because the government didn't meet the full cost of the losses, Luton has had to go to the government for the capitalisation directive to borrow money, in effect to mortgage that council's future to the government. So I intend to keep to those budgets again in 21-2 and in 22-3, and I intend to do what the last administration spectacularly failed to do, which is when you set a budget, you stick to it, and you come in on the nose, and you don't take money from your reserves. So there will be no losses to revenue count. There will be no vanity projects such as the Bath Eastern Park and Ride. There will be no vanity projects such as the Bath Library project, which was completely botched, no underachieved savings, and no, going back to one of our public speakers, no planning applications that ultimately could cost the council £750,000. That is good stewardship, and that is what underpins the sort of stuff in this report. Good stewardship of finances and good delivery of things that the council said it should do. So with that, Chair, I close.
Excellent, thank you very much. So before we move to the vote, I think it's extremely important that as leader of the council, and I don't think I could find enough superlatives to do this, is to give a heartfelt thank you to our staff. So on behalf of myself, the Cabinet, the entire council and everybody in Baines, I would like to thank the outstanding effort of the council staff, and I'd like that to be noted and put on the record, please. Thank you very much. I move to the vote. All in favour?
That is unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. I bring